Hey, what's going on, everyone? Meteorologist Jonathan Kagas with you for another edition of Tropics Watch. We get together at least once a week during hurricane season to talk all things tropics. Good news is there's really nothing going on, but there's still a lot to talk about. So we're going to get into all of that in a couple of minutes. Again, if you like the content that we are putting out on this channel, please hit the subscribe button, that big red button that pops up at the bottom of the video. And when the bell comes up with it, click that and you will get alerts anytime we publish new content on the News 6, clickorlando.com YouTube page. Also hit me up on Facebook, Jonathan Kagas News 6, or on Twitter at Jonathan Kagas. We do a lot in between these videos as well on my Facebook and Twitter pages and talk a lot about the tropics and the weather going on across the country, as well as there's, even when it's quiet, there's always a lot to talk about. So the first thing that I want to talk about, it was yesterday, Saturday, about this time, that Colin was born. And it was the same time, 24 hours later, that Colin was no more. It is just a remnant low now. And again, it's still impacting the Carolinas as it would have, even if it would still be considered meteorologically tropical, which it isn't. And again, it is officially dissipated. So Colin was only around for 24 hours. It was born at the 5 a.m. advisory on Saturday and officially dissipated at the 5 a.m. advisory on Sunday. Still bringing some heavy rain, some squally weather, if you will, to the Outer Banks. So still kind of an ugly beach weekend for the 4th of July holiday along the Carolina coast. Some rip current issues as well along the Atlantic seaboard toward Virginia Beach, getting into Ocean City, Maryland, Delaware, if your plans take you in that direction. But nonetheless, Colin is no more, and Bonnie is in the Pacific. So now we have nothing officially in the Atlantic to track. We're going to talk much more about that in a second. But again, nothing going on in the Atlantic Basin. In terms of Bonnie, this is going to be a trivia question now for years to come, as Bonnie is now only the second named storm to do the crossover and keep its name. So it had officially survived the almost mountainous terrain of Central America. We're going to take a closer look at Bonnie's track in a second, but the latest on Bonnie, at least where it came from, 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. There you go, a 60 mile per hour strengthening tropical storm. Its pressure now down to 997 millibars, lowest it has been. As I find my trusty arrow, there it is, 997 millibars. And now I have three arrows on the screen. Need to find my little eraser. There we go. But nonetheless, the center is way over here. All the thunderstorms with Bonnie still way out ahead of it. So it's still poorly organized, but it is expected to get better organized as it generally moves off to the west, kind of paralleling the Mexican coastline in the eastern Pacific. So there you go, a 60 mile per hour storm with that pressure again down to 997 millibars. Again, the lower the pressure, the stronger the storm. So when you watch that pressure come down, typically the wind speed responds increasingly. Look at this. It's forecast now by the National Hurricane Center to become a Category 2 storm. So it's crazy. It's rare to cross basins and keep a name. It's even more rare for these things to work their way into the next basin and then strengthen. Look at this, a Category 2 hurricane. By the time we get into late Monday into Tuesday, there's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, a 100 mile per hour Category 2 storm, and then still a Category 1 hurricane by the end of the work week. So just some craziness going on, and again, really not impacting anything in the Pacific Ocean, but from a historical perspective, again, only the second time since 2000, since the World Meteorological Organization changed the definition, changed the rule anyway, that as long as the system maintains its center, maintains at least tropical depression status, as it crosses the land entity that would define the basins, it keeps its name. Otto was the other storm to do that. We'll take a look at Otto in a second, past Otto from 2016. I want to show you this, and again, it's pretty rare. It's only the second time it's happened for a basin crossing storm. As I zoom back in, I have the historical track here. And this is basically the area that a system would need to cross in order to not get completely torn apart by the ridiculous mountainous terrain of Central America. I mean, it came in right along the Nicaragua-Costa Rica border, so it kind of split the difference between the higher elevations. You see some of the mountaintops here of Honduras. Nicaragua's a little bit better, but still there's some mountains around. So it split the difference there. As we take it closer back down into Costa Rica, the mountains kind of pick back up again in the southern part of the country. But where Bonnie came in, it really split the difference in the terrain. So that helped it, number one. It also got some help because you see that water source there. For at least half of its life, quote unquote, over land, at least over Central America, it was not over land. It was over Lake Nicaragua, that big body of water on the western part of Nicaragua. So really, it only had to go, you can pull out the trusty ruler, about 60 miles over land until it hit water again. Now, granted, it wasn't the ocean, but a good moisture source for it to at least maintain its intensity and structure. And then just a little strip, about 10 or so miles again of land before it eventually emerged back over water into the Eastern Pacific. Again, keeping its Atlantic name. So there's going to be two B names in the Eastern Pacific Basin this year. We had Hurricane Blast earlier, just a couple weeks ago. And now Bonnie is going to join it as the second B storm. So it's not going to get the D name, the fourth name storm of the Pacific. So some fun facts for you, some trivia. Again, down the road, if you're playing trivia, that might come up. So remember, 2022, it's going to be a weird year for especially the Pacific Basin because there's two B storms. And again, that second time a crossover storm happened. The last time that happened was with Hurricane Otto back in 2016. So you see it pretty much came ashore in Central America, basically over the same area that Bonnie did. So again, there's got to be the stars aligning. You need to have a system that far south so it's not crossing the crazy mountainous terrain of Honduras, Nicaragua, certainly as you get up toward Belize or the Yucatan Peninsula and into really Mexico. And it came ashore pretty much the same area as a Category 3 hurricane back in 2016, very close to the Nicaragua-Costa Rica border. It may have even, it just went south of Lake Nicaragua, but it was a much stronger storm than Bonnie was as a result. And then came out and it weakened over the Eastern Pacific, so Bonnie's going to do the opposite. It's going to strengthen again as it kind of parallels Mexico. But nonetheless, it's rare. It kind of has to have the stars align for the storm to be that far south to find that sweet spot in between the crazy mountains of Honduras, Nicaragua, and then of the southern Costa Rica. But Bonnie did that. So long story short, Bonnie was the second storm to cross basins. Elsewhere in the Pacific, there's one little disturbance that was moving through the central Atlantic and then eventually the eastern Caribbean. And now as we take a closer look at it, it has a 0% chance to turn into something tropical. But where it is now, it's impacting Puerto Rico with some rounds of heavy rain anyway. Again, the environment is hostile in this area. The wind shear has picked back up. So there's no shot for development of this system. But nonetheless, this tropical wave is bringing rain to Puerto Rico as it continues to work its way kind of up and out of the Caribbean back into the southwest Atlantic over time. So that is what is going on there. Wide view of the basin shows that there is not a lot going on. Again, this is good news now, and I think this is going to start to get us back into a quiet period. I was talking on our last episode of Tropics Watch that I do think we are going to be in a relatively speaking quiet period over the next couple of weeks. I'm going to get into that in a second. First, I'll just kind of show you there's that kind of stretched out wave. That is because there's a ton of wind shear just ripping it apart. So this one really never had a chance, and the Hurricane Center pretty much had this really never having a chance. It was always a low percentage for development, and now there's no chance for it. There, of course, is the flare-up of thunderstorms. The brighter purple is the colder cloud tops the satellite is seeing, so the brighter the purple, the more intense the thunderstorm activity is. And then right at the top here, right by the banner, there's little old Colin. What was Colin? Again, it is no more officially dissipating and becoming a remnant low as of 5 o'clock Sunday morning. And then there's a lot of clear sky out here in the main development region of the Atlantic. If you've been looking toward the little tropics loop here where the arrow is pointing, and again, you see the development area there. There are no little blobs highlighted there, which is good news, again, by the Hurricane Center. So nothing expected to develop over the next 5 days. But I have the Saharan dust looping above my head there. And so that is one of the reasons why that things are going to quiet down in the main development region, which we really typically don't see much flaring up. So Bonnie was a rarity. Bonnie didn't develop out there, but it certainly, those thunderstorms came from Africa. We are going to quiet things back down. I'm going to show you now my other screen, and we're going to talk about one of the reasons why that is. So this is a model forecast here on tropicaltidbits.com. Love this website for, you can track recon with it. You can get some model data from it. But this is basically the world view here of rising motion. And what we are looking over, and let's see my mouse kind of scrolling over here, all of that brown color. That is some widespread sinking air that is going to work over most of the Atlantic Basin over the next week. So this is ending here on July 5th, for the week starting July 5th. And you just see all that brown color. So certainly something can pop up if it finds a little bit of thunderstorms, and it can always pop up even in an unfavorable environment. So it's not like we're not going to get anything, but the large-scale features are certainly going to work against this. So take it forward in time here. This is now through the second week of July, and you see where that brown color is moving. So it's moving closer to the main development region and over Western Africa. Not favored for development there. So I think the first 2 weeks of July are going to be pretty quiet in the Atlantic Basin. But then as we get over to the third and fourth week of July, you see that green come back, and that green represents rising motion. Now, it doesn't mean that anything tropical is going to develop. All this means is that we are going to have an enhanced area where we have large-scale lift, if you will, large-scale rising motion to get thunderstorms to develop. So as we look towards that third week of July, we could start to get at least an area favorable for development. And in order to get a tropical system, you first need to have the thunderstorms to develop that. So you see it there in the Eastern Pacific. So would not be surprised first if we saw something develop in the Eastern Pacific, and then we start to get things a little more favorable as we get into that third week of July. You see there's the 19th. So really as we go towards the back half of July, and then going forward, that little green area representing the rising motion starts to work its way. My mouse is now to the left side of the screen over Western Africa. Now, this is going to be significant because now we start to have climatology line up where we could start to see Africa begin to shoot off several tropical waves from the African continent. So we're going to watch that closely now as we start to get into more climatologically favored end of July, and then really August, that Cabo Verde season pick up. So while with that third week of July, we could look for something into the Gulf Caribbean. As we get in towards the last week of July and then the turn of August, we'll start to look for potentially a few waves rolling off of Africa to track, as that would also, again, start to line up with climatologically. So when you have large-scale features matching up with climatology in terms of where and when those storms get going, start to raise the antenna a little bit. So enjoy the quiet period while we have it. Again, never let your guard down in hurricane season by any means. Always make sure you're checking back. And again, we're going to continue to put things out, put these videos out, even when things are quiet, because like it's quiet now, there is still so much to talk about as to why we're going to be quiet, and then kind of looking into the future, and then of course the historical stuff. But nonetheless, always make sure you're vigilant, paying attention, and we're going to keep on putting these videos out to make sure that things are still quiet, talk about why it's quiet, and talk about why we think things could start to ramp up again as we get into that third, fourth week of July, and then as we get into August, and then certainly peak season down the road towards the middle of September. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, for liking this channel, and for subscribing to this channel and liking the content. Again, hit me up on Facebook. That's going to be Jonathan Kegas News 6, and then on Twitter at Jonathan Kegas. And then, of course, if you like the content that we are putting out, hit that subscribe button at the bottom of that video. And then when that little bell pops up, hit that, because anytime we put new Tropics Watch content out, you're going to get a notification. You can watch that at your leisure. Again, this is Jonathan Kegis from News 6 in sunny Orlando, Florida, with the latest edition of Tropics Watch. All is quiet on the Atlantic front. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.